I'm Bob from Who Rolls There. I am hosting the small press panel at Celtic Con. We have, on my left here, Ciaran Marcantonio.
Hello. Mr.
Raymond Roche, Paul Carroll, and Kay Murtagh down the end. I'm going to ask the guys to introduce themselves, then I'm going to ask them a couple of questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience for some questions. So we'll start with Ciaran. Would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Ciaran, and I am an independent comic book writer. I've been writing comics for about 8 years. I was originally the editor for Lightning Strike Comics. I've been the editor-in-chief for Rogue Comics, and I'm currently working with the Irish Writers Centre on a project called Black Sheep Comics. I've written about 25, 26 comics at this point, all independent books, and I'm also a podcaster. I currently work with the Comic City cast and the Comic City Festival, and that's me. There you go.
Hi, I'm Ray Roche. I'm one half of Two Pugs Publishing, my wife Michelle. I don't do half as much as he does. We just do small independent comics, and it's a hobby, but we love it.
I'm Paul Carroll. I've only been writing comics for a couple of years, but I've been writing prose since I was like 12. Don't ask how old I am. I don't want to talk about that. The last thing, yeah, I look younger than I am, which is good. The last thing I released was an action comedy about a cat that's an assassin called Meowch. It's full of violence and cat puns.
Hi, I'm Kay. I'm a freelance illustrator. I haven't really been in the game that long, but I started doing illustration when my disability got really bad and I had to come out of education, and it's really opened doors for me as a way to express myself and actually get into the art community while being at home, so it's great. So yeah.
So I think the question most people in the audience will want to know: how do you make comics? The simple questions. How do you get into this?
Go for it, right?
There's all different levels. If you can draw and write, you're laughing because you can do it at home. You can print them on a photocopier. You can staple them. You can sell them at local fairs and things. The next level up is you can write or you can draw. So you have to find either a writer or a drawer, and then you make one. Then the fun starts, because after that it gets very technical. You start off with a passion, you write a story, you find an illustrator, you get them to actually draw it. When it's finished, it goes to a printer after you've lettered it, maybe coloured it, but you've edited the hell out of it backwards and forwards. It goes to a printer, you get copies back, you look at those, make sure they're right. And then you find places like this, like Celtic Con, and you get a table and you sell and you make a fortune. That's
Blatant lie.
It's a little bit of a lie. But yeah, there's all different levels, and you get started by starting locally. Find a group who's interested with you, and you share talent and share experience, and come to things like this, talk to people behind the tables who've done it. But it all starts with someone having an idea, sitting down and writing that idea out. That's how you make comics.
I think most counties in Ireland now have a group that meet up regularly to discuss either art or writing. I know in Kilkenny there's a drink and draw where there's a dozen artists.
Dublin has probably the most of those.
Dublin has the most of them, I think.
Comic Jam, Decaf, our own Black Sheep Collective, Rogue, Lightning Strike. There's many different types of art groups as well. I mean, you don't. What's the best way to put it? If you're interested in making comics, or you're interested in making art, or you're interested in writing, the best way to start doing it is to just start doing it. Does that make sense? Really, just start doing it. If you like writing, start writing. If If you like drawing, start drawing. If you like colouring, go online, find a bunch of pictures, download them, colour them. You know, it really is that simple.
Well, most Irish artists, if you ask them for a piece so you can colour it, they will give it to you as well.
Oh, they will, yeah, because they love having a coloured piece then to put up without having to colour it. Yeah. Or pay for it. But yeah, I'd ask, I mean, we've all gotten in at different levels at different times in our lives and in the actual growth of the scene. So like, I know I'm probably in the scene the longest here, then probably Paul. Yeah, you came in. I remember you coming to panels at Dublin Comic Con, getting inspired to do that kind of thing. Ray, I remember you coming in just a couple of years ago. And how are you finding it now that you're just dipping your toes in?
I'm very new, but
Yeah.
Like how I got into it really was that I was going to cons just for fun, and then I was posting my art on Instagram, and I gained a following, and everyone was like, "Why don't you go to cons and do art?" And then I found that like the more I actually posted online, gained like lots of traction, and then like the people know me, and then they'll pay me for stuff, and then
it's the part that lets you do more of it.
Yeah. No, exactly. Like I didn't think I could make a career out of it, and then in the last year or so, that's kind of I've been doing a lot of cons and I've doing a lot of like online stuff, and it's really just because it was just a passion of mine, and now it's become something that I can like live off, which is incredible.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's great to find that. Like, how do you guys find now that you're in the scene a few years? I know Ray, we all kind of separate off into our own little islands, don't we?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Well, Paul is very into the media and social part of it. So he would do a lot of anthologies with lots of people. Whereas I'm very isolated. I just have an idea and I find an artist and then I make it and then I sell it, hopefully. And now after 2 years, people come to conventions and they say, "There's my card," or they come to online and say, like just 2 weeks ago in Enniskillen, we found a great artist and she's doing a fairy tale for us. But people eventually, they get to know your name at the conventions or online, and they come to you and they say, "I can draw, or I can colour, or I'm an editor," or whatever, and they hand you a business card, and it just grows exponentially. If we had the money, we'd be churning these things out. There's so many people with stories out there, but it's an expensive business, you know.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
But eventually, like Ciaran says, they get to know your name, your face, and work comes to you. You know, it's amazing.
Which is kind of the crazy way in circles. Like you start off with the idea, like I know we've all been there at one point or another where we're going, I have no idea how to do this. I have no idea. And for me anyway, I can honestly look back and go, for the first 2-3 years of me doing this, I had no idea what I was actually doing. You know?
Well, I was spoiled because I was asking you and Wayne, I was asking Paul here at questions, go to cons or online and say, how the hell do you get this printed? Or I have to get colour done, how do I do that?
Yeah.
But in this business, it's still one of those friendly things where people will give you any information you want. They don't hold on to secrets, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what's great about it.
Yeah.
You know, people will help you when you're starting off. And it's not about we're only selling something, so if I tell you the secret, you can't sell it with me. You know, we're all selling so many things that are so different that we're not encroaching on someone else's territory. You know, I can't write superhero comics. I've tried and I just can't do it. All my stuff,
do it.
Yeah,
Can't do it.
all my stuff is weird and wonderful, like, you know. But I'm sitting next to a guy who's done probably the best book you'll see on this downstairs.
Shush.
No, if you want to see the benchmark of what we all should be doing, Neon Skies, because
lads, shush.
it is. It's that before you get to Vertigo or to Image or someone like that, not the PC, but they say Image, Neon Skies is the best you're going to see. But what people don't realise is it took the man forever, and it was heartache, and it was all sorts of problems. But
3
now-
years,
yeah.
2 comic labels, and a relationship.
But this is it. But Ciaran, tell you, he didn't start off with Neon Skies. He started off very, very small. You know, start off small with anthologies or local things. You know, if you have an Irish interest and you're selling something like The Bog Road, it's a great book, but it's an Irish book, and people go to conventions and go, it's The Bog Road, I'll buy it. and then they find it's slightly more than a bog road. But to have that connection with the thing you're selling to Ireland, it helps a big deal. Like I write about We're the Month for Crap, and it does make any relation to anything, but
talking cat.
but this is it, yeah. So
Now, let's be clear, a talking murderous cat.
Murderous cat.
but believe it or not, there's a market out there for every story you want to tell.
Yeah.
You know, no matter how crazy it is, there's someone who'll buy it.
Yep.
But you just have to get in at some level and work your way up to it. And you get better each one you do, you know.
And it's actually something Trina Farrell said on Twitter a few years ago. No one's first book is their magnum opus.
Yeah.
The first thing you do is never going to be the best thing you do.
No.
Like that's the thing you make the mistakes on. It's the things you learn everything from.
Absolutely.
Like the first thing that I put out in comics was awful. I don't even put it on my table anymore. I just hide it.
Oh no, here's where I own that. In that I actually have found, and here's a mad thing, I was just talking about it downstairs. The first comic I ever did was a story called The Clockwork Universe, and I spread it out over 7 anthologies, so it was 4 pages in an anthology over 7 books. And then when I collected it, I only did a limited run of like 100 of it, left all the mistakes in, because that was my learning period, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And now that I have it in a collected version, I sell more of that book than I sell anything else. But I leave all the mistakes in because I will never make them again. Because you have that clear look at, you know, once you've done this for a couple of years, you can kind of look back and go, I really enjoyed doing this, but ooh, I didn't know how to use crossbar eyes then, or I didn't know how to, you know, space panels out correctly, or I didn't know how many words I should put in a balloon. There's a tiny little picture on this page because I've written a giant paragraph.
That's right, yeah.
You know, that kind of thing. So that all comes with experience.
Yeah.
And when you're doing the self-editing thing in small press, you really have no one to learn from except for your own mistakes for the first few years.
And obviously, you read other people's comics.
Yeah.
If you're not reading comics, then it's difficult. It's difficult to start making them. And actually, the one thing I found for writing guidelines online, 2000 AD have general guidelines for their submissions, and their recommendation is no more than 3 speech bubbles in a panel and no more than 25 words in a speech bubble.
Yep.
So you know how much your characters like to talk on a page, which is helpful because it's too easy to just let loose. Much easier to have them say nothing, but then then you rely on the artist to do a lot of storytelling.
Yeah, from an educational standpoint, it's like if you want to learn how to do this, and I can brag about this now, so I'm going for the first time. There's now will be an on-running course in the Irish Writers Centre that teaches comics. It would be called Comics and the Graphic Novel. Bob was in the first class, which I taught, and the exact kind of things we're talking about here are what we're trying to teach people in that course. How to make comics from the start to the end. And we'll be doing that pretty much 3 times a year, it's looking like, for the next few years. So there is now an on-running course on comics in Dublin if anybody is interested. Drops mic.
Yeah.
I'm holding it. I'm not dropping this. These are expensive.
I think the best advice I ever heard at a panel was
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't do it, run away.
It's stressful.
If you want to write,
20 years old, my hair's not really supposed to be like this. Yeah.
if you want to write something or draw something, don't just sit there in front of a blank page. Go off, read books, watch a film, do something that'll get your mind working.
Get brain going.
Get your brain activated.
I used to tell a joke where there's no such thing as writer's block. That's what I thought. That my challenge was put an A4 page in front of me and I'll fill it up with crap. Then my wife said, write a children's book. And I couldn't. I couldn't put one word after another. And so now I'm doing a course with Oisin McCann.
Yeah.
And I've learned so much in just 3 weeks. He does an online course. It's very good. It teaches you how to write for children. It's not for children to learn how to write, but writing a book for a child of a certain age. And the steps he takes you through are very, very simple, but very tricky. But without that, I'd have been lost. I couldn't believe I couldn't fill that page with words, because that's what I always did. And no, I couldn't do it. This writer's block thing, I walked around in a bad mood for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
It was worse than the time I tried to write the Superman story. And
That's one I come back to myself.
The rules for Superman are very definite. You don't even know they're there because you just read them. You assume, oh, this is all magic, it happens one after the other. But there's a ton of rules about how it should all work. And again, for kids, there's a ton of rules for that. The good thing about being independent and just writing what you want is you can break the rules, but Neil Gaiman said to break them, you have to know what they are in the first place.
And to do that, you can take Neil Gaiman's masterclass in comics online, which is a very, very, very good course that breaks down pretty much the same kind of things we try to break down in our course, which takes you through the steps of how to make comics. There's a wonderful analogy out there called How to Get to Batman, right? You may have seen it in visual form, I don't know. It's a simple image. I used to throw it up at the start and the end of every class that explains how you get to Batman. And it takes 6 people to get to Batman. It takes an editor, a writer, an artist, a colorist, a letterer, and a printer to get to Batman. So nobody can make, I say nobody, but there are people out there who can make comics by themselves. Most people need a team. So if you want to work in a team, start learning the process of how to work in a team. It doesn't have to be doing comics, it can be in anything. But I feel very strongly about the fact that comics should be a collaboration. Don't know how you guys feel about that.
Well, the first comic I just thought, I've written the Bible. You will not deviate from that. That's what I want.
What lesson did that teach you?
Love that.
Well, it cost me a fortune, and it cost me a couple of friendships. But at the end of it, it was, you have to get back on the horse and finish it. And, you know, the second time round, it was listen to the guy who's telling you good information and bad information. Now, we have several projects at different stages now. But it does, unless you can do it all yourself, you have to get on with people, you have to listen to their whinging. No, I mean, they're good. You got to like my artist at the moment is doing a horror comic for me, and he's in Vietnam. He's 7 hours ahead of me. So when he's going to work in the morning, I get a big long email or a Facebook thing, and it's 1 o'clock here, and I'm going, my wife is going, turn that off. And I'm going, okay. But he has a problem. And the number one thing with the team is, if the guy, the next person you in the link is having a problem, you can't leave him hanging.
Yeah.
You have to answer that question, because he'll go off half-cocked and make a load of mistakes, and it's your fault. So you have to communicate. And I'm very bad at communicating. I generally say, I want a phone. I don't care what it is, just give me the phone. And that's the wrong thing to do. Because, like Ciaran was saying, it's a team. It's a team effort. Although the people who draw it are the rock stars, because they make it look so good.
Yeah, we write. Yeah. We, as writers, have the wonderful job of writing one line that says, 2-page splash, intergalactic war. Right? That's our job done for 2 pages. You hand that to an artist, and an artist will go, how big of a war? How many ships? All of that sort of stuff. So you have to take that into consideration when you're working with a team, you know? You have to consider that something that we might do that is very small as writers. If we were to translate, like if I were to write something for you and go, hey, you want to draw a battle scene? 2 pages? there you go.
I mean, I'd do it, but I'd be sitting there on Facebook like, okay, how many people, what does, which side looks like which, and what costumes do you want them in, and what was your view, what was your vision? Because I don't want to spend, that's my biggest fear as an artist, is if a writer does, like for me, I've done quite a few book covers, and
I hear that's a fun job.
No, because you get the book and you have to read the book, and then you're like, okay, and then the writer will say, I want the main character, and I'm like, okay, so I'll imagine the main character, I'll try and draw her, and then you send it and you spend hours on it, and then it's like, oh no, I thought like she had a little bit longer brown hair, and I'm there like, I just spent hours just colouring that in.
Provide as much information to artists as you possibly can.
Yeah, because composition and everything is hard, and like, because especially for storytelling as well, like for purposes, like you want to you want to do the best you can, especially like say like if it's a war, you want it, but there's certain characters you might want to put in the forefront and in the background and all that stuff. So you really need to know all that stuff, because you don't want to, because art takes ages, much longer than people think.
I mean, literally, as long as it took me to say that was probably as long as it would take me to write. Do you know what I mean? That's 2 day, 3 days.
Oh yeah, if I'm fully working, like if I don't take breaks, that's a battle scene, full color, full line art would take me at least 2 days. So, and I overwork myself, so that's 2 days of just hand me a Lucozade, please. I'm working.
But that's why it costs money to get artists.
The main thing for writers is like we should treat the script as a conversation with the artist. So like a lot of my scripts are filled with questions to the artist, because it's not meant for what the final piece. So like it'll just be in the description, it's like, can we do this if I think something is too ambitious, because how I imagine it is probably easier for the artist than how like I'm picturing in my head, because Gareth comes out with stuff that I wouldn't even have thought of, and
that's the
amazing.
best thing about working with artists. And generally I find it's because, and it's not to be detrimental to any artist in any way, but they're taking what you've written and they're trying to run it through their brain for a visual capacity and go, right, well, maybe it will work better like this, or maybe it will work better like this. And that phrase, maybe it will work better like this, is get used to hearing that, get used to accepting that, because as writers we can only do so much, and sometimes an artist just has a better idea.
I think that I'm working on my first short one with Ciaran here, and I was writing it out. I had it written out. The ending wasn't working, but I just kind of forced it in, gave it to the artist. The artist said to me, the ending doesn't really work there. What if we did it like this? And all of a sudden I was like, there's our ending.
Sive was right, wasn't she?
Sive was very
right.
She
was.
But it's all about collaboration. It's not, there's no one person that makes a comic. It's a team.
Unless you're Red Piscar. Unless you're Red Piscar, or
unless you have lots of talent.
And time. Goddamn talented people.
I think we'll open it up to questions from the audience. Any questions?
Yeah, go ahead, just shout it out there. You're good.
I have to think of stuff.
That's okay, we'll talk amongst ourselves and look at you awkwardly, that's fine. No pressure.
I suppose for me the thing is like getting ideas onto a page, like how long, I suppose it is different for different things, but I suppose what the process for everyone is just sort of getting it down.
I've asked that question at panels for the last 7 years.
That's why I want you to answer it.
Because I ask them every time.
Yeah.
There's no easy answer. The simple answer is you just do. I find I'll write several stories. I'll throw out 6 of them and concentrate on one of them. I go, well, that's a good idea. I won't write a story. I'll draw little stick figures. And now I can't draw to save my life, but that's my process. I'll draw stick figures, know what way the story is going, and then I'll write the story based on what I'm seeing. And while I'm looking at the stick figures, I'll go, yeah, I need to do more explaining in between how they get from that panel to the next panel. So I'll add to it. And that's my process.
My process has been to teach you to take away from those, right? Because
I add way too much.
Brainstorm. I brainstorm a lot, just writing out random ideas for things that might work. And the best way to break that down is when you've written out a load of ideas, okay? Take a day or two, think about those ideas, and whichever one comes back to your mind the most, that's the one your brain is telling you should go with. That's generally what I do. In that, if I'm working on a project and say if I'm taken by a project and I'm actually fully writing it, but I need a break, I'll do a brainstorm and see where those ideas take me. And if something else catches my mind for a few hours, then I might even start on another project and just kind of go, here's some rough ideas for that. But You know, if you're writing, you can always work on multiple projects at once. That's the pleasure of being a writer. If you're an artist, you're generally focused on getting that one project finished and then on to the next one and then on to the next one. So you're lucky in that if you want to write, the best way to do is just start writing. Putting those, it might seem like the most daunting task in the world, putting those ideas down on a page, but when you put them down on a page and your brain starts to process them that way, you'll find that, or at least I do anyway, I can't speak for anyone else, but in my mind, the idea that keeps coming back to you out of those ideas, that's the one you should focus on.
And I usually find it helps to know how long of a comic you want to work on before you start writing it.
Very true.
So like, if I know I need a 4-page comic, you don't want to go with an idea that seems too big, because if you can't tell the whole story in those 4 pages, then you're looking at making a bigger comic, or you're cutting out things that are actually important. And it also makes it easier if you just need to plan it. So
I had that problem as well. I started with a very short story. It turned into a 50, 60 page scripted format. So if I was to actually turn that into a comic,
you're talking at least 3 issues.
Yeah.
That's 60 pages of artwork. That's at least an artist for 3 months. You're going to have to pay them.
Yeah.
Start small. The rule of good drama, as they say, is start small and build. And the same can be said for comics. I always say to people, and what I'm teaching in the course now is start with like maybe a 4 or 5 page comic. And then do a couple of those to get yourself nice and tight storytelling, and then move on to bigger ones, or move on to ones where you're releasing a story in chapters through anthologies. I know you've done anthology work. I know I've done plenty of anthology work. But anthologies are a good way to learn the whole process, in that you are put into an environment where you're working with other creative people. You're all telling short stories, so everybody has a kind of fair stake in the book. So it's a good environment to learn in, I think. I've come back around to anthologies because I spent my first few years doing anthologies, and then I was like, I don't want to go near them. There's too much work. There's too many people. And then went through doing solo books for a few years, and now I'm back doing anthologies because I found, genuinely looking back on it, it's the best way to teach people. Yeah? Right?
There are tricks now to writing a story. You get post-its. You say, what do I want to write a story about? Is it about a character doing something great? Or is it about a feeling I have? Fear, love, terror, whatever. You write that on the thing, you put it down, you get 2 more. You say, what 2 things does that remind me of? And then you write down on those 2 post-its. And then each of those 2 post-its, you say, there's 2 more post-its, what does that remind me of? By the end, by about 6 or 7 of these, you've got a load of words on the bottom. And that's what your story is about, really. In the beginning, your brain works in weird ways. You think about that, but this is what it's really doing. But it wants to say that. And that's what I do. But I tend to put 2 stories into every comic.
An A and a B.
Yeah, something's happening in the book, but it's about something else, really.
Subtext.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah.
Hello. We have a guest.
Guest speaker today is...
Another great, if we're talking tricks, right? Hey, buddy. How you doing?
And what do you think of Brexit? Okay, there you go.
It's quite all right. We have a little guest star. It's cool. If you're talking tricks, a good trick that I teach to people to learn how to write a comic, if that's what you're interested in doing, pick up any comic. Look at it, read it, then use that comic, go write the script for it. You have it there in front of you. Go write what you think the script for a couple of pages of that comic would be. That's a good way to kind of reverse the process. You have a finished comic, you read a finished comic, go write it. Go actually see what those pieces look like when you try to take it apart and write it in a script. That's a good one. I tried it. Yeah? Do you have any more questions?
The other thing you can do is talk when you're at conventions like this. Go up to the lad's table, talk to him. Like I said, I've spent the last 7 years going to Ciaran, going to Ray, going to Paul, and just chatting to him, getting to know him. And now they can't say no to me because I bought all their stuff.
We do have what we call the Bob Fund. That like we're aware of it. It exists. Bob buys everything that we do, and as such, like it. And I find it immensely amazing that it finally took you actually paying me for a writing course to get you finally writing and doing something. Like you could have done it before then, man. We tried, but yeah. It's really just, if you want to get started, just get started. Yeah. You know, I mean, everybody here was at a stage at one point where they went, I've no idea how I want to do this. None. So, and all of us are now doing it in one way or another.
Yeah.
So, you know.
But you have to write it down. If you sit thinking about it forever, nothing gets done. Yeah. Write it down, and even if it looks crap, that's your first draft. Mm-hmm. And that'll give you an idea of what the next thing's going to be. But if there is a thing where people think, I spent a whole weekend writing this, it must be great. Ciaran will tell you, you can spend a year writing something. Because you write it and put it in a drawer and take it out again, and then you rewrite it and edit it.
Yep.
So the first, but you have to write it down. If it's in your head, you're sort of explaining it, you're going, well, he's this, he's that. No, write it down, write the characteristics of the character himself, and say, right, that's who he is. But you have to write it down. Because once it's black and white, it becomes hard, fast in your head. Yeah, I know where I'm going. Because keep it up here. It's nice to be, creative in your head, but if you've got a pen in your hand and you want to draw Superman, thinking about Superman all the time won't do it. You have to make those first strokes and then build it up from there. And writing's the same. You have to write it down.
You can't edit a blank page.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can't make a blank page better. So
you can certainly make it worse, though. Yeah.
If you're writing, though, I think don't write one page and then edit that page.
Oh God, no.
That's a terrible thing to do, and that's what I used to do. You write the full thing and then go back.
See how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, if you go one page at a time, you get hung up on the first page.
You'll never get past the first page if you do it that way.
And I'm sure it must be the same for an artist. When you're drawing, you have to choose very carefully the lines you're going to draw. Obviously, you have to. Do you have a self-editing process for while you're drawing?
Yeah. So for me, I have about 4 liners.
Right.
And all the first 4 are deleted. They're not deleted, but they're hidden. Right?
So digital artist, I'm taking.
I'm a digital artist.
Excellent.
Yeah,
all right.
I'm messy. So no, I get the portion ready. I usually do it in a blue or a pink.
Yep.
And then I'll go over it with black, and then take away the blue. For me, obviously, it's different with ideas on a page. For me, I spend a lot of time. Like I found that I love drawing like magic and glowing thing. I love doing that. I found that out because I started watching YouTube videos on how to draw digitally. I started talking to artists. I started making friends with artists. I take a lot of inspiration as well from like fashion, like actual people. So like I go on Pinterest and I look at all the newest fashion that's coming out lately, and then I get inspiration from the clothes and I love art. So I'm doing like a bit of an experiment in Art Nouveau style, because I've just fallen in love with that style. So I've started doing wee pieces with that. But for me, like some of the times I sit down and like I want to draw this character like this, and at the end of it she's different, completely different pose, different lighting, different whatever, because I end up getting an idea and be like, oh wow, that's lovely, I'll do that. Sometimes, now I don't know if it's the same for writing, but sometimes you will start doing, well for me, you start drawing and then the drawing kind of makes itself. You kind of just, it decides, not you. Sometimes, just, I'm very particular, but sometimes, some of my best work has happened. Chance, I was like, oh, that leg looks great. I'm gonna, you know what I mean? Like, oh, okay, great. Look at that pose. Oh, I did not expect that pose to turn out that well. Okay, great. I'm gonna show this to everyone now. But yeah, like I do a lot of research, and I like to keep on top of. Like I follow a lot of artists. I constantly watch art. The best advice I could ever give for an artist is, I've said it before, I'm 23, and I said, no matter how good you are at 23, there's a 14-year-old on Instagram who's better than you. So make sure, you don't,
Wait till you hit your 30s and you're still feeling that.
No, literally, I've had people come to my stall. They're like, "Oh, will you follow me on Instagram?" Yeah. and then I'm like, oh, their art is so good, and they're like 14, and I'm like,
Listen, just right through it, just hit follow, they
Yeah,
came
just
here
like,
for you.
They came here for me. But like no, like you know, that's because I didn't grow as an artist until I took some time to learn from other artists, and then I literally grew in a year so much better than I was before, because I took a step back and I said I learned from other people. Like for me, like I'll watch YouTube videos of people and I'd be like, oh, I love the way she colours that eye. I love the way she did that. And then I'd take that and I'd be like, oh, I'm going to try this. Or, you know, like copy but keep it to yourself, an artist's style, and then you'll figure out, oh, I like this one little thing, or oh, I like the way she did the shading on that, or whatever. And it teaches you how to do it. And then by the end, you've got a little bit of your own style, your own art, but you've taken from other people. But like, you know what I mean? It's not a bad thing.
It's
you know,
collaboration in its own way.
Yeah.
You know, you're learning styles from other artists to develop your own.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah. So that's my
No,
thing.
there's one funny story. First comic, you scrutinise everything. You look at every single stroke, every dot. And your artist goes away for a week with his new girlfriend to Malaga, and when he comes back, he gives the character a head transplant. She now looks like his girlfriend, right in the middle of the book.
This actually happened to him. He's not making this up.
Yeah. But Michael's such a lovely guy. I said it to him. He said, "What do you want me to do?" I went, "Well, that's the last page she appears on. We pretended somebody different on that page." But yeah, you can be focused.
Was that hard for you, was it?
It was yeah.
Oh my god.
I met him at Derry last year. I'd never met the guy in person. Ciaran recommended to me.
Great lad.
A lovely bloke and very funny. A daredevil, literally a daredevil. Been in Game of Thrones and all sorts of things. Right? Jumps off buildings and mountains for fun. But lovely artist. But everything he said to me was, yeah.
Sounds like Derby already.
And when I said to him, he had seen the film. I sent him a bunch of copies when it was printed, and he gave it to his friends, did all sorts. But it wasn't that I pointed out to him at the convention, I can hear later, that he'd changed her. He went, "Oh, that looks like." I said, "It does, doesn't it?" He says, "Yeah." He said, "I'm not with her anymore." But yeah, he's so focused on what you're doing, sometimes you can
Get lost.
Yeah, get lost in it and make a slight mistake. But that's what editors are for, you know.
Yes, editors.
Yeah.
The great sufferers of this business.
But there's the thing, letterers and editors, and you know, they don't get enough kudos, you know. They hardly ever get the name on the cover, you know. And they're so important, you know.
I feel oddly about the editor's name on the cover thing, in that, you know, an editor is a contributor to the book, but the editor should be a guider of the book. And therefore, I'm always fine with how, you know, I'm credited inside or whatever. That never really bothered me, because I see the job of the editor to be to shepherd the creators through the process. You know, so for me, it's about their baby. You know.
Yeah, my daughter now edits her books.
Yeah.
And I say to her every time, "Do you want your name on the book?" And she goes, "No." I think she's waiting until one is a big hit, and then she'll say, "Yeah, put my name on that." Then.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes.
Yeah. It is. But this whole industry is full of funny stories where you thought you'd made a mistake or an accident, or something good came out of it.
Yeah. Ever see the original design for Batman? Red costume, blonde hair, black mask, big bat wings. Yeah. Somebody edited that.
Thank God they did.
So,
Do we have any other questions?
have you any other questions?
I can stay going all day.
What time are we at?
It's a good quarter to.
4-3.
Okay.
Another 2 minutes or so.
Cover it.
So I'm going to ask, what's your dream projects? I'll start with Kay. What would you like to do, Kay? What's the dream project?
I would love to be a storyboarder for an animated show. That's my dream. I'd love to do the panels that the animators would animate, but I'd like to be the person who does the actual. Because for story, so it's pretty similar in the fact that like. Your writer comes and says, "This is what my scene is," and the storyboarder has to imagine how the scene's going to act out, and then the animators will take each frame of the scene that the that the panelist does, and then animates it, obviously. So, that would be my dream to do.
Very achievable in this country at the moment with all the animation studios around.
Yeah.
Well, Ireland is quite competitive. I have a friend from America who's coming all the way over here to do animation because we are so good for animation in this country. We're great. So that's the dream, anyway.
Awesome.
Paul, dream project.
Not including creator-owned stuff, I'd love to write a Wiccan and Hulkling story. They're from the Young Avengers.
Yes, yeah.
Wiccan is he's one of Scarlet Witch's 2 children, and Hulkling, correct me if I'm wrong, he's Skrull Kree. And he's a prince in both worlds, but they still didn't fix their problems over it. And they're a couple, and they're like Marvel's first, not their first big gay couple, but they're one of their gay couples that they had going out throughout the comics. And Kieran Gillen had a great Young Avengers plotline with them, where it was kind of a whole test in their relationship, and it was one of my favourite things to read. Yeah. So I'd love to actually be able to write with those 2 characters.
Cool.
They're not young anymore.
No, they're just Avengers.
They're just Avengers now.
Yeah.
Dream job. I suppose it's what I'm doing. I don't want to work for DC or nothing like that.
Yeah, that's the thing as well. If you're getting into comics, you won't have to work for DC or Marvel. You can do your own thing.
Yeah. I would like to write the best, funniest female detective story ever. My sense of humour, though, it veers off. My wife keeps saying, "You can't say that." So she's the point of saying it.
That's why we have editors.
But the funniest female detective story ever. The people go, "We're not going to do one of those because Ray did it. He did the best." That's the dream thing.
I look forward to buying
Outside of my own, I'm going to say the same thing, creator-owned projects. If I were to pick, I'll go one from each house, right? Superman at DC or the X-Men at Marvel. Those are the 2 characters, or the 2 sets of characters, houses of characters that kind of drew me into comics in one way or another. So yeah, if I ever got to work for Marvel DC, it would be X-Men or Superman. So yeah, not aiming high. If you want to do this and you want to go to those levels, you better be ready for somebody to ask you if you have a story at that level as well. So, I know you mentioned earlier trying to write a Superman story.
Yeah.
I do those kind of things all the time. I do those kind of just writing out. Sometimes when I'm looking for ideas, I'll completely go outside my box and go, right, if I were writing the X-Men, what would I do? And I'll just randomly start writing out character names or which ones I put on my team and stuff like that. And sometimes even just doing that little bit of fantasizing about working for one of those big companies can knock something around in your head that will get you helping on a story,
All my Superman superhero things tend to veer towards taking the Mickey out of it.
Yeah.
And it's hard to sustain a reader's interest if you're constantly parodying something.
I disagree. John Constantine fighting Superman, written by Garth Ennis, calling him Captain Underpants while punching out 2 of his teeth with a magic punch.
But when someone has done that, can the rest of us do it?
Yeah, Garth has kind of nailed that taking the piss out of superheroes thing.
I won't do a book if someone else is doing one and they're better than me. Lad we know called Wayne, he announced one time, I'm doing a horror western. And I had a horror western already written. I was trying to get an artist. And I said, my horror western, I can't do it if you're doing it.
That was the year of horror westerns.
It was, everyone was
doing a horror western. 6 people announced horror western stories.
What was weird is that we were all on this panel and we were all like, what are you working on? Oh, it's a horror western. Wait, what?
Yeah. And that's what happens. It happens. It's just synchronicity.
Yeah.
But it is finally happening, the horror western. It should be out next year.
Yeah. We all keep saying that. Our horror westerns.
But this one now.
Renaissance 2 is coming.
Oh yeah.
It is.
But that's a western. Everything about it is a western, except it's not. And that's the thing you can do.
Yeah.
You can. Western stories are great because it was the old west and it was spoken storytelling thing, and as each person told the story, it changed slightly.
And never let the truth get in the way of the story.
Never tell the truth. But you can tell a western. I have a script for a fantasy sword and sorcery thing that started as Road to Perdition back in the 20s, and someone pointed out that's Road to Perdition, and I went, oh crap. I had to change it. But literally, all I did was change the weapons and change the clothing, and the people just talk the same way. And it works. And it's a really funny, interesting thing that no one wants to draw because I have literally spelled out every little thing they had to put on the page. And people keep saying, that's great, but there's too much there, right? I don't need to know.
I find that finding that particular balance, it really comes from having a conversation with your artist. You know, if you're lucky enough to be in a situation where you know who's going to draw your stuff, then generally, like I've told this story before on panels, like I've had the experience of having two artists, one who loves as much detail as possible, and the other who's like, what are you doing writing out this logo? I don't need all that, you know? And that's giving the same script to two different artists, you know? It really is just kind of tailoring it to somebody's taste.
We had an idea for one. I'd done a screenwriting course, and I thought, right, I write a script, it'll get made into a movie. And when you do, everyone says they love it, but the person you're talking to has no real power. They're just saying, yeah, it's great, but it never gets high enough to be greenlit by anybody. And they see like 1,000 scripts a year anyway, so someone kept saying to me, yeah, it's never going to work. So I thought, make a comic out of it. And I gave the same script to a male artist and a female artist. And they both got the wrong end of the stick the same way. They both sent me back almost identical concept art. And I went, no, we'll just take some pictures and show them what we're looking for. And by the time we finished that day, we had 500 pictures taken. And my wife said, she's got a comic there. Made a comic out of it, which is pictures.
It's on his table downstairs, can you ask?
But it's like a storyboard for a movie that I want to make. It's not a comic, but it is.
But it's totally
never go to people saying, I want to make this movie, so I'd like to make a comic. That diminishes comic work. Alright? Jesus Christ.
But I mean, you try all our table's full of weird and wonderful stuff. Nothing looks like anything else, and only our kids' stuff is sitting in the same vein. Everything else is just what I was thinking about the day when I wrote it. And that's sometimes your thing. You don't have to stick with one character or one kind of story format. The Western thing is great because the good guys are always good guys, bad guys are bad guys, and you know you can
flip the paradigm, change the Westerns forever.
Yeah, and you can re-envision it. But a lot of stories are Westerns, and people tend to think Westerns are horse opera. Like, who wants to? One artist did say to me, the horror Western you're doing, I'm going to pass on that, Ray. And I said, why? And he went, horses. And I said, what do you mean horses? I just sent an email, and he said, I don't like drawing horses. I said, well, it's a Western, so you're going to come across a horse. And he goes, yeah, no, pass on that. And you know.
It's amazing and stuff like that. But you can't predict that until you're dealing with it.
We're just about on time, so finish up by getting you to plug your wares. You're all downstairs in Artist Alley or whatever you'd like to call it. So
if you're going to buy one book, buy Neon Skies.
Back off, will you?
No, it is.
Someone else's
no.
You're doing this wrong,
No,
Ray.
if that's the only book you're going to buy that one because it's a blueprint for how you should do it.
Alright, I reckon you should buy Me Out by Paul.
Oh yeah,
that's great. We're going this way, we're going this way. Alright, Ray's got a great one called Down Bones. You should check out.
If you have any money left over, you know, we do a children's book downstairs called Do You Fart, Mr. Monkey? That, believe it or not, is a bestseller. I've sold 550 copies of it so far. Yeah. Which is more than everything else we've sold. It's just a bit of fun. It's a bedtime story, and we'd love to make 10 of them. But we'll see. Maybe we will.
So now that Ray's plugged all of our stuff, we don't have to. Also check out Catch a Lovely Art at her table. I'm sure she has plenty of prints. Plenty of prints.
Stickers, lots of them. I've got Voltron and Ciaran, lots of them.
Oh really?
Spot the fanboys and
Voltron and Paul Ciaran here is pretty cool. Yeah.
That is the thing though. When you finally get your comics and you're at a convention and you're selling stuff, everything you make you'll actually spend on someone else's table. You go home with a little pack of stuff And that's the way that you support
I
everybody
have a
else.
solid rule. I don't start spending until I've made what it cost me to get here.
I break that rule every time.
I know you do, Ray.
Yeah.
And I know you do too, Bob.
But the thing about these conventions is, it is pretty unique. You know, like our stuff and Ciaran's stuff and Paul's, they sell Forbidden Planet and stores like that. And we sell online, we sell on Comixology and things like that. But the person who comes over to your table, that you bought something from them and then they bought something from you, it has a different importance.
Yeah.
You don't go home and just throw it on a shelf.
No.
You make a cup of tea and you read what they did. You know, and it's
a very supportive scene.
It is. It's a community-based thing. The whole comics thing. Until you get rich and famous and go to America, you know, and then you come back and you go, I'll do your panel, but talk about me all day. And that's how it is. That's a career path. They go away, they come back, do their own stuff. And there's a massive artists and writers in Ireland who went to America on big titles over there and have come back and done their own stuff. If you ever get a chance, there's one called Half Past Danger.
Yeah.
It's by Stephen Mooney. Yeah. It's one of the funniest things. It's Indiana Jones meets
Jurassic Park.
Fighting Nazis.
Yes, and there's Nazis. And it's very, very funny.
If we're doing that, I have to pimp Shelby's Savage Town.
Oh yeah, Savage Town.
Because that's what as much as Half Past Danger is an Irish comic, if you want to call it that. Yeah. Savage Town takes place in Limerick and is written by a guy who lived there for quite some time. Is a very popular comic book artist named Declan Shelby, and he got who's the artist? Phil Barrett to draw it. And Image Comics, which is the number 3 publisher in the world of comics, picked up this comic from Limerick. About gang life in Limerick.
Yeah, it's love-hate in Limerick.
Yeah.
Right? And published it worldwide through Image Comics. That blew, like, of all the comics that made it through the Image, that blew my mind, because I'm like, how did he pitch a Limerick crime story?
It is very
to Image
unique,
Comics.
I've read the pitch, actually, I understand why they bought it.
Yeah.
Yes, so you can get your work out there to Image even if it's about Limerick.
That's Limerick City, as they say.
That's because the audience is out there, you know, and people are always looking for new, fresh stuff. Not everybody wants every format of Batman.
Not everybody wants Superman fights and capes. Some people want stories about people. And all of us here, I know, including, and I'm going to say it because Meowth has a good bit of humanity in there as well, are very unique characters that we are creating ourselves and pushing ourselves. And when something is your own, you kind of love it a bit more than even if you were working on Superman and Batman and those sort of things. So.
It's almost no one in the Irish small press actually does superhero stories.
We all avoid it.
Yeah.
Because we all know you can't. Well, apart from Nigel Flood, who kind of fills that gap for all of us, really.
Yes.
Yeah. If you are interested in Irish superhero comics, check out Nigel Flood. He's downstairs.
And Button Press Comics, which is all ages superheroes.
Yeah.
That's right.
But they're not here.
I created. I did a superhero comic once. The Stokes.
I read for the Ren now. I've got issue 13 downstairs, but other than that, like it's literally like Nigel and Jason.
Yeah.
Nobody else touches superheroes.
Yeah.
And even Jason didn't even go for mainstream. He went for Irish, all ages superheroes.
Yeah.
And it's all based on like Irish folklore and.
Yeah. If you'd ever like to hear the story of a young boy from Dublin who engages the powers of a magical stoat, we have the comic for you. So that's it. Shall we wrap it up?
We're at time here, so I'm going to thank Kay Murtagh, Paul Carroll, Ray Roche, Ciaran Marcantonio.
And we'd like to thank Bob Hoyne.
Yes, thanks for having us.
We're thanking Bob Hoyne of the Who Rolls There podcast.
Yes, that's a small panel. Thank you very much.
Woo.